Erik is with us today as the Conservation Chair for the Conejo Audubon Society and manages the group's 12-year-old Lawns to Habitat program. Lawns to Habitat educates the public about the value of native plants and enhancing habitats on private properties. So think about this in terms of your own yards. Erik was a National Park Service ranger, so that provides some great background, and a biologist at Joshua Tree, Sequoia, and Yellowstone. Very cool, very cool. And now runs Acorn Design Studios. They wanted to clap for that, they did. But he now runs Acorn Design Studios, which helps residents create pollinator and wildlife habitats. You can tell very much that Erik is an avid supporter of our natural open space. Please help me and welcome the wonderful Erik Oberg.
I'm pretty certain the reason that I got invited to speak tonight was because I volunteer with an organization that has the word Conejo in its name. So I feel like I'm part of the club. I'm really delighted. Thank you all so much for inviting me to spend this evening with you and share a few words on behalf of the Conejo Valley Audubon Society. So, as some of you are probably aware, CVAS, our Audubon Society, is our local chapter of the National Audubon Society. And we focus on conservation and education with a particular focus on birds. We absolutely invite you to attend our free monthly bird walks and educational programs anytime that you can. And what I'm going to talk about tonight primarily is our signature grant program called Lawns to Habitat. So we incentivize folks to get rid of their lawns and plant native plants to create habitat in our yards in the public or on private property. And I'm also going to give a shameless plug and request for our spring garden tour that highlights and features the folks that have gone through the Lawns to Habitat grant program, and we invite the general public to come and actually see those yards. So with a group like this, I don't think I have to do too much convincing to give you my top 10 reasons to go native, but you might find some of them useful as talking points. So number 10, native landscapes reduce maintenance costs. So we really want to give people the understanding that going native can get you off the relentless hamster wheel of mow, blow, and go lawn service. And well-managed and maintained native landscapes typically only require quarterly care. So you will actually see a significant reduction in your annual costs for what you spend on your yard, and especially for folks that are really responsive to dollar and cents arguments about why to change their landscape. That's a really important one. Native landscapes also help us reduce air pollution. If you think about all of the associated travel and equipment costs that are contributing to our local air quality, native landscapes just simply require a lot less travel and a lot less maintenance, so reduce air quality, reduce air pollution rather. And I can tell you from personal experience, having gotten rid of my own lawn in 2021, I was actually a Lawns to Habitat grant recipient myself, in the interest of full disclosure. I made the mistake of expressing too much enthusiasm for the program and was immediately hornswoggled into becoming the conservation chair for Audubon Society, but it worked out well. After we got rid of our lawn and went native, we saw a full 50% reduction in our water bill, so that's another great economic argument to make for making the transition. And what I'm going to share with you in a little more detail tonight is this point, that native landscapes really can add aesthetic interest, with the caveat that they're done well and also maintained properly. And I'll give you some examples of that tonight. Of course, they provide food, shelter, and nesting sites for all the birds, pollinators, and wildlife that many of us in this room love to enjoy. They can also, somewhat counterintuitively, actually help us reduce fire risk. A very knowledgeable lady named Melanie Barrakeely, who I worked with at Sequoia, actually wrote a great article on this subject. So check out Melanie Barrakeely's article on this topic if you'd like to learn a little bit more. They also, of course, help us protect our local biodiversity. Can add home equity, because you can really make the case to the next homeowner. You can show them all the money they're going to be saving with this transition. And they are, of course, much better adapted to both our current and future drought conditions. And number one reason for going native, it gives you that warm, fuzzy feeling that you know you're doing the right thing. So. I want to share just a very quick story with you about how I came to love native plants, and it really has everything to do with that fella seated in the middle of the front row there. That's my Grandpa Frank. I'm the fella in the black shirt sitting next to him. I grew up in Minnesota, and Grandpa Frank was a die-hard native plant enthusiast. He would be here among us tonight if he was still with us. And he used to drag me out on nature walks, which was hiking the railroad right-of-ways in search of remnant prairie plant populations that had been missed by spraying and plowing to collect native seed and then propagate plants in his yard. The other documents that you see here down in the lower corner, the number 264. 264 is the number of plants Grandpa Frank succeeded in introducing in a 2-acre plot on the lake cabin property up north. That is an impressive accomplishment. However, I would suggest to this audience that 264 species is too many plants for 2 acres of land. It can tend to wind up looking like the native jungle. And that's one of the things that I really want to drive, the point I really want to drive home tonight is even our current water agency education materials present this as a view of what our native yards should look like. I would suggest that that's a little overplanted and maybe not really the model that we should be shooting for. That's really also not that sustainable. The sign down there says Gardens Gone Native. I think it looks a little more like Gardens Gone Wild. So if we want to make the case, if we want to be good advocates and stewards of this transition and this movement, I would suggest that it really helps to take into consideration some really fundamental design principles. So when we start to incorporate things like the use of negative space, of open areas in between plants, when we think carefully about selecting plants that are signatures, that provide pops of color and texture to focus attention in different parts of the yard, considering the use of layering, both in texture, color, and height, so that, you know, the little things are in the front and the medium things are in the middle and the tall things are in the back. These are things that really lend not only aesthetic value to your property, but they're simultaneously providing habitat value. The other thing that I spend a lot of time talking to clients about is understanding what they want their yard to do. And so helping people understand how changing their landscape can really help them use underutilized or little used areas of their yard while still keeping in mind things like sight lines and these kinds of design ideas are really critically important to having a successful project. So that's kind of the bigger picture of using natives in landscapes. Let's talk a little bit more in detail about the Lawns to Habitat grant program itself. So as Tanya mentioned, the program has been around for 12 years. I inherited it just a couple of years ago from a wonderful lady named Dee Lyon, who I'll show you a picture of in just a moment. But we give out 25 to 30 grants per year. So we're looking for folks that want to remove their turf, plant natives. The application period, unfortunately, is not open right now. It doesn't open until May, so you have to wait. But then we award grants in June, and then all summer long, myself and other volunteers with Audubon conduct site visits. And this is really the bread and butter of the program, where you actually get a 1-hour in-person site visit consultation. We go to your house, we walk around, we take notes, we talk to you about what you like, and actually help you develop a list of native plants that are suited to your yard. The program's open to anyone that lives in our local area in any of these communities. We don't want to create native habitats and attract lots of birds and wildlife only to have them chomped on by cats. So folks do have to make a commitment not to have free-ranging outdoor cats. And of course to use low water use irrigation methods. And then just a couple of years ago, we also added another weighting criteria for folks that are adjacent to parks or open space. We really want to help build habitat connectivity between our public open spaces and our private properties. And of course, we're also looking for folks to help us with our educational engagement. So the grants are only $250. But because you get plants at wholesale, that equals about 35 to 45 plants. And they come from some really great local nurseries. You may know El Nativo out in Azusa and Growing Works here in Camarillo. And we've also had support over many years from Matilaha Nursery up in Moore Park. The site visit I mentioned, we actually deliver those plants here to Thousand Oaks for you to pick up. And then grant recipients also have the opportunity to participate in the garden tour, which happens every April. And then we just recently added alumni grants. We do 5 of those a year because we recognize that just because you get a grant one year, this is a process. Gardening is an exercise in delayed gratification, and sometimes folks need a little extra help. So we offer one follow-up grant for folks if they need a little more assistance. Our very first grant recipient was none other than the Starks. So Brian and Amy worked with D. Lyon to kick off this program 12 years ago. And I'll show you just a couple of before and after photos. So here's Brian hard at work getting his lawn prepped for all of his native plants. And here's an idea of what it looks like now. Another Lawns to Habitat grant recipient in Thousand Oaks. This is what their backyard looked like before and after. And I guess I'm the keynote, so I get to put in my own yard. So this is what my backyard looked like at the start of the program, and that's what our yard looks like now. So it was really wonderful to have that assistance. I wanted to also pull together, and I suspect we've got a lot of knowledgeable folks in the room here tonight, so I also wanted to show you the distribution of the Lawns to Habitat program over the last 12 years. So every data point on this map is either a grant recipient or an applicant. So the yellow polygons are everyone that received a grant over the last 12 years, so over 200 folks. And then the white and the purple is showing you what happened in 2022. Typically, we get 30 or 40 applicants for 25 to 30 grants per year until 2022. And then with the drought restrictions that we had, we got 91 applicants that year. And so what you're seeing with the white is the folks that got grants in 2022, and the triangles are the applicants in 2022. And what we saw was a big bump in numbers, especially in Simi Valley. Obviously the program started in Thousand Oaks, but we're really trying to reach out and expand our reach. I thought you might appreciate to also see how these grant projects relate to some of our open space. So here you see that. Here's how the grant locations fall in relation to protected areas. To our local streams, here's our local hydrology map. Yeah. And so what we really want to do is use this program as a tool to keep building habitat connectivity. And the program is also very flexible because it allows us to connect with a lot of homeowners that maybe don't have a ton of knowledge or experience about native plants, so they're willing to plant any number of different things as long as they meet their criteria. And that gives us an opportunity to introduce plants that also have very specific habitat benefit, especially for things like pollinators that are in decline. So some of our monarchs, our blues, our checker spots, that have host-specific plants that they need for different stages of their life. we can introduce those plants on private lands to really provide additional habitat benefit. So just very quickly, a few of our accomplishments. Just over 200 grants awarded over the years. That's over 14,000 plants in the ground. 30 to 40 applicants per year, typically. It's also a really great soft diplomacy education tool. We're offering something of real value. There's that personal connection with people where we actually get to, they invite us to walk around their yards and talk to them for an hour is a great way to connect with folks. And it has a real possibility to fill in those habitat gaps. All right, we've arrived at my audience participation part of the program. Are you ready? All right, so I'm going to show you my top 10 list of native plants, but I'm not going to give you the names right away. If you know them, yell them out. You ready? All right, what's this? It's a perennial. All right, that's a good start. There will also be penalties if you don't know. No. So this is a very popular one. This is our local lilac verbena. It smells amazing, and it's also a fantastic native. How about this one? Bladderpod, I hear it. Very nice. Excellent. Great plant, long blooming time. Here's an easy one. Yarrow. Lots of folks know yarrows. We do have a couple of native yarrows and then a whole bunch of hybrids in all different colors. Here's a gimme. Deergrass, there it is, Muhlenbergia. If you have a slope, this is fantastic for erosion control, thrives on abuse and neglect. How about this one? Witch mallow. Extra credit if you know that one. This is Palmer's Indian mallow, super drought tolerant, literally blooms for months of the year. Mine is still blooming right now in the backyard. How about this one? Oh, I knew there were going to be some plant nerds in the room. Yes, Baja fairy duster, crazy drought tolerant. And I really would like to make the point with this slide that we really need to be thinking not just about plants that are growing successfully here today, but we also need to be anticipating things that we should plant that are going to be more drought tolerant for future conditions. So I'm already seeing folks planting palo verdes and fairy dusters and things that have previously been associated with more desert environments. So that's going to benefit folks in the future. Here's a really obscure one. Definitely extra credit if you know this one.
Rice grass.
This one's tricky. So this is Melica imperfecta, a gorgeous, delicate, fragile little native plant, little native grass. The birds absolutely love these because the seeds are really high in protein. Love those native grasses. How about this one? If you have room for a tree in your backyard, this is a crowd pleaser. So this is Catalina ironwood or fernleaf ironwood. They're native. They grow like crazy. We put one in the ground 2 years ago. It's over 7 feet tall. It was a 1-gallon plant. And it's evergreen and it has beautiful white flowers. How about this one? No, not a lupin. This one's hummingbird sage. Nurseries cannot keep this on their shelves. The hummingbirds love them, and so do the people. And I'm going to wrap up my top 10 list with this one. I assume everyone will know this plant. Come on. Conejo buckwheat. There you go. Eriogonum crocatum. Excellent. All right, you did very well on the audience participation part of the tour. All right, I talked a lot about plants, but I am here representing Audubon, so I have to have some bird pictures. So it's really important not only to have native plants, but also to include some water element for wildlife. You do not need a $20,000 pond and waterfall. A simple small fountain bubbler is really all you need to attract wildlife. I'm a big fan of insects, so even things that you might think are gross or scary or a pest are actually wonderful food sources for birds like our local insect eaters, such as you see here. And I also want to put in a plug for raptors. They are nature's original integrated pest manager. So if you're sitting there thinking, Eric, every plant I've put in my backyard was immediately eaten by a gopher, what you need is an owl nest box or a raptor perch to systematically thin the herd of your rodent population as a sustainable alternative to rodenticides. So. And you might be surprised to know that I've also succeeded in having some clients put in dead standing trees, snags, but that had cavities specifically to encourage cavity nesters like some of our local woodpeckers. So as long as they're set away from the house and you're not, you don't have fuel impinging on your structure, they're really important for habitat. So, as I said, the last thing I wanted to share with you tonight was just a quick pitch for our local garden tour. It happens every year in April. We typically have 7 to 10 gardens from the Lawns to Habitat program where you actually get to, there's no charge, you just get to go and wander around people's backyards and talk to them. However, this seemed like a great group of people to say we're losing our garden tour coordinator this year. So if anyone is interested in helping coordinate the garden tour, this could be your year. So as was mentioned, we offer garden tours with different stages of evolution. So we include some new grant recipients with brand new lawns, some that are just a few years established, and then some very mature gardens so people can really see the progression of how they change over time. We offer lots of educational material. And I just want to conclude by saying if you or anyone you know is interested in getting a Lawns to Habitat grant, we would love to have you apply. Please check out the Conejo Valley Audubon Society website or just search Lawns to Habitat Conejo Valley and the program will come right up. Opens in May and we'd love to have you. Thank you so much for inviting me tonight.